Hello, everybody. This is the Empirical Audiophile, and welcome to my channel. Haven't done a video in a while, but I just want to bring you up to date. Now, these are the Altec Lansing Voice of the Theaters. They're basically like the A7s and the A5s that Altec made. But if you watch my last video, I explained about the Super Tweeter and the horns and everything. Now, I would rate these speakers at almost pristine condition. They are just that well taken care of, and they are absolutely, uh, you can't tell by this, but they're absolutely a beautiful speaker. They have modifications if you watch my videos. One modification I did is I added 7-inch legs to the bottom, slanted them about 1 inch, and brought them up higher, so the tweeter now is at ear level. So that's really how the speaker should have been made back in 1975, 76. I bought these, I think, in 1976, brand new. I'm the only owner. They've been modified, as I explained in my other videos. In case you want to look at the archives, you'll find out exactly how I modified these particular Altecs. And if I were to be honest and compare these compared to, let's say, the Klipsch, no, the Klipsch don't even compare to these Altecs. You would have to spend $16,000, $17,000 to get up to the corner horns to even start coming close to what these Altecs sound like. Only because they've been modified. The only thing that has been really modified on them is the crossover, but the wiring internally in the speakers is all Kimber 4TC wiring. So all that's been upgraded to a very high-class wire. But the difference of adding the legs between not having the legs. Now in 1975, the speakers basically sat almost on the ground, which means the horn was never at ear level. It was always lower. And we know through, well, just through the course of events of speakers, that speakers today are all designed so the tweeter is at ear level. And now since I put the Superdome tweeter, if you want to know more about it, you can look at my archives. I explain all about it, what I heard. Since that's been added, because a lot of people have always told me, oh, you need to add a tweeter onto the Altecs just to get that little bit of upper frequency where it rolls off. So I added these on. Now the Superdome tweeters are about 96 dB and the Altecs are about 97 dB. So they're 1 dB different between the Superdome tweeter on top and the horn. And I married them together by using a sound pressure meter to make sure that they were both in sync with each other as far as how much output they were putting, so the horn doesn't overpower the tweeter and the tweeter doesn't overpower the horn. The bass goes up to what, 500 hertz, and then that's where it crosses over to the horn. And the Super Tweeter has its own crossover in it where you can set it. That's all in my last video. The legs have definitely made a huge difference, almost as though you have bought a brand new speaker. It's hard to believe, at least for me, to convince me that adding 7-inch tall legs to the speaker would make that big of a difference, but it does. The high frequencies now just come out as, what can I say, as well as any new speaker made today. And the sound quality is like any new speaker you could do today. And I know some people are going to disagree with me. Oh, well, the Klipsch are so much better. No, Klipsch to this day, I hate to say it, Years ago, Klipsch never got a great review. They got mediocre reviews. Today, because of the YouTube, they're getting these great reviews. But Klipsch really still using cheap wire, still using very, very cheap parts in their crossovers. So the prices went up, but you would expect at the prices they're charging, like $6,000, I think, for the Fortes, and then they just go up from there, that they would be using only the best parts for the crossovers. I mean, how much more is it going to cost them to buy excellent parts for their crossovers? Really, how much more would they have to spend? What, $10, $20 more that they would charge you to put in excellent parts for their crossovers? And still today, they use cheap wire and cheap crossovers. Anyhow, how are they getting these excellent reviews today? It makes you wonder, how can they do it? How can they pull it off when they haven't really changed their speakers much in 20 years or more? I think it's just the reviewers today. They're looking to get a new speaker, or make sure they review the Klipsch, and therefore they're giving them these great reviews that they never could pull off before the internet really became more and more popular. In the magazines, they could never pull it off. Klipsch couldn't. Now all of a sudden they're pulling off these outstanding reviews, and to me, it's just phenomenal. But how can they do it? Well, we all know how they can do it. Anyhow, if you were to get a pair of, let's say, LTECs like this, which they're absolutely beautiful. I know you can't tell very well by the picture that I'm showing here how beautiful they really look, but the whole thing that you're looking at, these LTECs, they are quite nice. Now you got to figure the mahogany that's on there has been patina now since 1976. So it's a very dark, deep, rich mahogany color. I've taken them and I put Old English on them throughout the years to not only darken them, but to keep them in good shape, to keep the wood from drying out. And the legs, as you can see, do have a retrofit, or retro look, I should say, to them. And I went through a lot of trouble making sure the legs were on perfect, so they're not mismatched. They're at 90 degrees. Went through a lot of trouble. Took me several hours to put those legs on so it would look good. But the sound has improved to the point where I can actually say that it sounds like a brand new speaker. Really, it's unbelievable. Cymbals and everything else, because now, of course, you have that super tweeter, and the horn is now at ear level, so you really get a whole different sound from these speakers than when they first were made in 1976. Of course, the baffle that is on these speakers, I re-engineered them. I'm an engineer, NASA engineer, so I redid that whole baffle. I did look up the price I paid to have those baffles done. Back when I had those baffles done, which was almost 15, 20 years ago, when I had those 15-inch baffles done, it was over $1,300. They were over $600 a piece to have one of those baffles made by a professional. And they made them according to my blueprints. So I did have blueprints I drew up for them, and they made them accordingly. But the one thing that I was kind of shocked over is when I start looking up all the specs to the speaker, I was shocked that they're only 97 dB efficient. And like I said, the Super Tweeter is only 96 dB, 1 dB difference between the horn speaker and your Super Tweeter up there. But they do marry together excellently. So it makes it a complete different speaker than it was back in 1976. A speaker like this today, probably price match would head up to about $15,000. And with the shape that these are in, Like I said, they're near mint condition. They would be quite expensive, but the sound quality is there. So they would justify the price according to today's speakers. Uh, Definitely a contender for any new speaker out there. Now, the sad part of what I just said is since these were made in 1976, probably made in 75, they were bought in 76 from L-Tech. The sound quality is so good, matching speakers of the day, you kind of think, where have we come in all this time since 1976, where speakers today can't sound better than these? And these are still dealing with their old crossover. Like I said, the wiring has been changed, but the crossover is the same old L-Tech crossover. And if they can match speakers that are being made today that cost thousands and thousands of dollars, you got to think to yourself, where have we come? Now, as you notice, these speakers are hooked up, as you can see, to all Conrad Johnson equipment. And when this equipment is turned on to Conrad Johnson, you hear nothing coming from the speakers. Absolutely nothing. You don't hear any hissing. You don't hear any humming. Dead silent. Dead silent. Well, that's because the Conrad Johnson was made so well that it has, it's just silent. They're silent pieces of equipment. They don't make any hissing, nothing. You can hear nothing from that big, huge horn from the L-Techs. So this kind of tells you, wait a second, the Conrad Johnson here is circa early 2000, like 2000, maybe 2001. So it's over 22, 20, 23 years old. And still it's working perfectly fine. Kind of makes you think, where are we going with all this newer equipment costing so much where it can't even outbeat equipment that was bought back in 20 years ago? And I talked to another YouTube channel guy who runs a YouTube channel, and he really said basically it's the same circuitry that they're doing. He said there's only so many circuits that, circuitry that you can use in your amps, preamp. There's only so much you can do. Then after that, you just got to keep repeating what's already been done. So that's basically what they're doing with the newer equipment. They're just repeating what's already been done 20 years ago. Maybe they could use a better resistor or caps or something if the tolerances have increased since those 20 years. But really, if you think about it, old equipment like this sounding just as good as modern equipment, something's not right. What is happening? But the person I talked to agreed with me that the newer equipment, it's being blown out of proportion. These people who are reviewing this stuff are giving it great reviews. But if you heard a system like this and compared it to a system today that would cost, this would be super expensive. The speakers alone would cost you, like I said, 13 to 15,000, and we're not even into the equipment. And it matches of the quality of what's being made today. You kind of think, well, where have we come in over 20, 30, 40 years with our stereo? Well, we've not come as far as you think. And that's the problem with this whole being an audiophile today. You're being convinced that you have to buy this brand new equipment. Everybody's going to rave about it. And you watch some of the reviewers. Some of the reviewers have these big rooms with little bitty speakers because that's all they can afford. You're not going to get a little speaker with a little 6 or 8 inch woofer to match a speaker like this with a big, huge 15-inch woofer and a big, huge, 17-inch horn, all made out of metal. Everything has been deadened inside that speaker. That horn is dead. It's completely, even though it's all cast aluminum, it's not like your Klipsch horns, which are all plastic. Okay, this is all cast aluminum. This would be very expensive to reproduce that horn in its entirety today. You would have to pay big bucks to buy a horn like that. Now they make them out of plastic, and that cuts down on the cost. And the big, huge ports you see over 4 inches in diameter, those two big ports, for the back pressure of that woofer. And there was another thing you'll find out about LTEC versus the clips. That 15-inch woofer barely even moves. Barely even moves. It's not one of those woofers you're going to see moving a big amount like a lot of the new woofers today. It barely even moves to produce the sound from it, from the tube amp. And it's bass you have to hear. And let me just tell you, the bass is so powerful that this is a slab that they're on. They're literally on a slab. And that's the slab that they're on is over 6 inches thick. And you can still feel the bass traveling through 6-inch thick concrete. 13, 14 feet away, you can feel that go up your legs, that bass from that woofer that you're looking at. That was a theater woofer. It was designed for tube equipment, very efficient woofer connected to the horn. This is all designed for theater use. But I wanted to bring you up to date that if you do have a pair of old LTECs, you may want to add legs. And I got the legs off from IKEA. They're capable of holding 1,400 pounds. Right now, the speakers that you are looking at weigh about 250 pounds because of the things I have done to it. But it's just unbelievable sound quality. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It doesn't matter whether you believe me or not. It's just unbelievable because it is matched up with the Conrad Johnson. And if you look, there's a Kimber for silver cable going to the speakers, and then another cable which is I think 12 gauge copper going to the super tweeter. Anyhow, I just want to bring you up to date that, and like I said, when the equipment is on, it's dead silent. In fact, it is so bad and so dead silent that literally you would think the equipment's not on. It is that quiet. If, like you see the Macintosh phono preamp, if I were to change that to a project preamp with tubes, you would hear a hissing coming from the speakers because the tubes would be making noise. And I tried a phono preamp from them, and it was too noisy. The phono preamp was. Now I'm sure with people who speakers, they don't have a big, huge, 17 by 7.5 inch horn. They probably wouldn't hear anything. But unfortunately, the LTECs did and will show you the hissing or the tube microphonics that the tubes are making. But when you can turn this set on and you literally get silence to the point that you think you didn't turn it on, and you can have the volume up to 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, or 2 o'clock, and you hear zero, nothing, that's pretty good. That is pretty good for equipment that's 20 years old and still can be fixed though. So a lot of this I see too on sale, older equipment, a lot of it's all messed up. It's scratched, it's been dented, remote controls that don't work, remote controls that look like they were dumped in Coca-Cola. I mean, it's like you can see why the people are selling them. People don't sell great equipment because today's equipment just doesn't sound better. It may sound different, but it doesn't sound better. And that is the problem with a system like this and a new system today. And it's a shame that Audiophiles have to spend so much money that they don't even want to spend money on speakers because they they look at a little bitty box speaker. They see a like the MoFi speaker, you know, and they complain about how much it costs, and it's made in China. And they complain about it that it's made in China. Why does it cost so much? And you know, they try to justify the cost by saying, "Well, this speaker would have cost 8,000. It was made in the United States." Really, that MoFi speaker would cost 8,000 for a point source speaker if it was made in the United States. You know, people aren't going to buy that. People are, I mean, you could buy a set of these completely done like this for about 5 grand, you know, 6 grand, 5 to 6 grand. The cheaper than you can buy the Fortes for. And they will tromp on the Fortes. They will literally just tromp on the Fortes. They will um, just devastate any of your clip speakers until you start getting up to your big corner horns. But then by then, you have to have a specialty room just to put those mammoth speakers in for the corner horns. And these have been compared to a lot of your Tenoys. But you want to compare these to Tenoys, you're going to be paying 19,000 on up. Because these were even compared to the Westminster Royals, which are what, $25,000 for the Westminster Royals, or a pair of Churchills, which went for 19,000. You could buy a pair of these that will tromp it. No. So anyhow, I did want you to bring you up to date. The legs have been added. Sounds like a completely different speaker. Just the cymbals and stuff sound like any new speaker that's being made out there. A lot of people will say, yeah, well, I always heard the L-Techs were soft on the high end, and they are. They roll off on the high end. Very typical of the horn, but adding the super tweeter brings everything back in the high end that the horn is missing, and you have a three-way speaker. Excellent. Cymbals and everything come out just as good as any speaker you can go out there and buy. But the whole thing of it is the dynamic range of these are far going to supersede the dynamic range of a lot of your speakers, and the size of instruments, voice and stuff, because the speaker is so large. No small speaker is even going to come close. No small speaker is going to come close to the size, dynamic. And if you want to talk about blackness, darkness, they're dead silent. I mean, instruments just pop up and they hit you right in the face. It's just, you don't even know they're going to be there, or changes. And detailing is unbelievable. Just, you actually have to hear it to believe it. So how can you get all this from such old equipment? Because the new equipment's not made any better. It's just new equipment. Something to think about. You know, I'm not here to bullshit you. I'm here to just tell you, this is the way it really is, people. You can go out there and keep spending money chasing your tail with this stereo equipment stuff. Or if you just think a little smarter, you can come up with a killer system for a lot less. But of course, you can't chase your tail because it's all designed to be that way. You really have to jump up to some real nice equipment. And even then, it was always said, if you jumped up to nicer equipment, you always had to spend a lot of money, and you weren't getting leaps and bounds. Like let's say you bought an amp for $5,000 and you went to a $10,000 amp. You're not going to get double the amount of fidelity out of that new amp. It's not going to happen. You're going to get a little bit, 1-2% better. That's it for your extra 5 grand. It's not worth it, you know. And don't be chasing your tail. Stick with something. I know a lot of audiophiles that stick with their speakers, that stick with the way they have it, their systems, because they realize this whole audiophile thing is designed to keep you buying new and upgrading. And they want you to keep spending your money and losing money and trading in your parts and losing money, trading in your amps and everything. Why do you think I kept with this stuff? Not a problem with it, dead silent, well-made equipment. And why do you think I kept with it? For the little bit of upgrades I've done on this, the price, hey, I just saved myself $10,000, $20,000 on speakers. I'm not going to complain. So I just tell it the way it is. So if you do have a pair of these, if you've never heard them, where they now are higher up at ear level, the tweeter is, incredible difference. Almost like you went out and bought a brand new speaker. I'm being honest with you. You bought a brand new speaker. They sound fantastic. Just by lifting them up, that's 7 inches off the ground. The bass is still tight. The horn is still great. You match up your super tweeter to the horn, and really you have a brand new speaker that will match any speaker today being made or supersede it. So until next time, this is the Empirical Audiophile. The only thing I can say is happy listening, and always take what people are saying about stereo equipment with a grain of salt. Think to yourself, why is everything getting these great reviews? It can't. There was a day when stereo equipment didn't always get great reviews. Some of them got trashed. Today, everything gets a great review. It can't be. It just can't be. Until next time, happy listening.